So now it's time to talk about financing your film. And I know we're talking about making a film with no money, but I want to give you some insight so that if you are trying to raise a little bit of money to have for your budget, the ways that you can approach that and the implications of each path. You know, a lot of times folks are trying to raise money with traditional high net investors. And you can do that. I've been part of teams who have done that for films in the past. It is a really complicated, laborious effort that is going to be difficult to navigate, and it involves a lot of legal assistance. And honestly, when you do it the right way and to make sure you're covered legally, it involves like a 250-page document that each investor has to sign. And there are also qualifications, financial requirements of the investors in order for them to invest in this type of endeavor. So it's something like each investor has to either have something like $2 million in the bank, or they have to at least be making $250,000 per year to qualify for this type of investment. So you're gonna need legal assistance to navigate that. You'll want to set up a separate LLC just for this movie, and that's going to help you. But it's a complicated road to go down. So I don't encourage you to do that at this stage unless you have significant legal help and you really do think that you're going to be able to raise significant funds for that effort. And when you're doing that, there are a few different ways that folks will structure the agreement of how the investors are paid back. One of the common ways to structure that is to do a 50-50 split between the producers and with the investors, but with the investors recouping their money first fully before you start to receive those funds on your 50% of the side. So you can consider that. The downfall of that is you don't get any money until they're fully repaid. And you have to remember that at least 80% of all movies don't make a profit. So that means you would never receive any money to recoup, whether to pay yourself or to go into your next film. So if you go down that road, you really want to consider if you can arrange that payment structure so that either you receive a certain amount of funds initially before the investors recoup theirs, or from the very beginning, you're both receiving 50%, not necessarily before the investors recoup their expense. So there's some things to think about. It is a complicated way to go. And as you do that, you need to consider the motives of the people who are investing. It's not necessarily that they want to make money, or maybe they do want to make money, and that's a motive for them. Maybe they have a secondary motive as well. Maybe they're passionate about film. Maybe they care a lot about the subject, or if your film is related to a particular cause, maybe it's cause driven. It could be that they like the idea of having their name in credits as an executive producer. It could be a hobby for them. They want to show off to their friends. So you have to consider that to evaluate if you're going to be able to deliver on those expectations. And again, reminding them that it's a very risky investment, that they're probably not going to fully recoup their money. So that's something that you're going to have to consider if you're asking for investment. The other route to go is the non-traditional route, where you or your contacts are going to supply the money, but more through donations or through crowdsourcing. So you can think about, is the money going to come from you, from your friends and family, and or are you going to leverage one of the crowdsourcing websites or platforms to raise the money? And when you're doing that, especially when you're asking other folks in your network to donate or to pre-order through something like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Seed and Spark, those types of platforms, you'll want to consider motives as well, and you're going to want to tell a dynamic story in order to move the needle and to reach people beyond your immediate friends and family members. I'm sure if you share this passion that you have, then there are going to be at least a few family members, a few close friends who are going to want to support you and to give a little bit of money. But if you want it to go beyond them, you need to consider, again, the motives of the people that you're asking to invest in this. And even though it's a donation or they're pre-buying a DVD through Kickstarter or something like that, they're still really an investor, and it's still really important to consider their motives and why they're going to care about your passion project and what's going to move them to want to give and support you. When we were talking about the writing and development stage, we talked about the coalition equaling your budget and building a coalition and how your subject is related to a coalition. And so this is where you're going to have to tap into that for raising the money for the film. What group of people are going to be especially excited about the story that you're going to tell? And that goes back into what's the micro niche and why are they going to care? You know, we experience this with different films that our team has created and different side projects that we've had. And the more clear that coalition is, the easier it has been for us to raise the money needed for the budget. You know, we did our very first movie, Hitting the Nuts. It's the poker documentary that I referenced before, poker mockumentary that I referenced before. And with that, it was a little bit more difficult, but there was this idea of poker fans and people within that network that were willing to give money. And you also have to consider, you know, some of those motives that we've talked about, where there might be people who want to give money and they're expecting a role in the film, whether that's behind the scenes or on camera, that they might want to be a featured role in the film. So you're gonna have to consider that. That is a reality that happens from time to time. It's happened with some of our movies. It's happened with some of my friends' movies. So there's that to consider. And that was the case with Hitting the Nuts. Also with our feature film, A Strange Brand of Happy, that was with a group of investors with a larger budget, and there were lots of things to navigate with that. But with A Strange Brand of Happy, unfortunately, it was our largest budget film, but we hadn't yet applied that key learning of the coalition equaling the budget. So the coalition for it wasn't quite as clear for a romantic, quirky romantic comedy that explores a little bit of spirituality and purpose. And it wasn't necessarily a message that, let's say, the evangelical Christian supporters are going to really rally behind, but there's not really a clear other group that you could go after. So it was really difficult to market that. And it actually made it into 43 theaters across the country and had some good numbers, but it wasn't as big as it could have been if we really had built that clear coalition. Whereas with another film called Fenced Off, this is a really, really low budget film done for less than $20,000. And with it was related to race relations. And there was a local church group that we were connected with that was really passionate about this particular subject matter. And they provided much of the funding to have the movie made. And so that's where it was. And we didn't even have to tap into friends and family. Whereas with my no budget feature film, Smells Like Community Spirit, it was a $2,000 budget. And there were folks excited to support that. And again, that's a low enough budget that you don't have to have a huge coalition. And I was able to get some support from my personal network of friends who were passionate about making movies, and fortunately for me, passionate about supporting me and something I cared about. So they were willing to invest that money. And also I started to involve them in the process. So a lot of those friends and their families were connected to providing food and providing some of the costume and being background actors and things like that. And we'll get into more of that later, but that's how the money was raised for that film. And then there was another film called Hope Bridge. And this was a movie really connected to suicide prevention and awareness. And with that cause, there were several people who had personal experiences related to that. It was a passion for them, for this cause. And that's where much of the money came from, was for that. And then it also, having that cause and having that coalition helped with the distribution of the film, of getting additional screenings into places and getting it picked up and supported, and folks sharing the word about the film. in various ways because we had that coalition. So you want to consider that with the subject that you're developing and with the folks that you're going to go out to and ask money from is why will they get excited about supporting this? Why will they want to help you fund this movie and to launch it? And you got to consider that and then communicate that well with whatever platform you're using, such as, again, there's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Seed and Spark, and various others that you're going to want to consider to reach out to them. And I will say, another thing that you're going to have to consider is where you set that goal and the repercussions of, some platforms you don't receive the funds if you don't meet the goal. You may also want to collect money from some of the folks who are going to give you the most money if you know who's going to give ahead of time and how much they're going to give. You may want to consider whether they do that through the platform or outside of the platform, because the platforms are going to take a fee, a percentage of whatever you raise. And so if somebody wants to give you a couple $1,000s, you don't want to give away a chunk of that to the platform if you could get that outside of it. Or you hold on to that, and if you are using Kickstarter and you're trying to reach a goal and you're a little bit shy of that goal, then you can put those funds in there to make sure that you reach the goal. But those are the things that you really have to consider with financing. Really think about what's the motive for the folks who are going to invest, and what can I do to communicate how the story I'm going to tell is going to connect with the motives that they have and their involvement